do large, medium, small design thing. So it's not a matter of how I'd go about it. It's a matter of just doing it. And in the beginning, you'll just have to practice it more and more often, since it's not ingrained. Like, because the thing is, I don't think about it, right? And you might think to yourself, what? Like when you're just walking around, right? Oops, I didn't put that on this one layer. When you're walking around and you trip, right? You walk and let's say you hit a rock and you trip. Do you think about putting your hands and your feet and all that stuff in front of you to catch? Like, do you actively and consciously think about that stuff? No, right? And it's because, you know, it was years of falling and tripping and not killing yourself every time you did that, taught you to put your limbs out. So when I paint, it's very similar. Like I painted small, large, contrasting shapes often, and because of that, I have it like ingrained in my system, in my bones. You know what I mean? Know what I mean? And so when you're just practicing, uh, you're designing and you're practicing to draw, like, you know, okay, I'm gonna this whole painting, I'm gonna just constantly just draw a large shape next to a small shape to a medium shape, and I'm just gonna keep trying to do that, you know. And you just practice that often, and you'll get better and better and better at doing it. And then the next thing you know, you'll be approaching your paintings very similar to like kind of how I go about it, which is I don't even think about it at all. I just do it. And so the reason why I do it, though, why do I do contrasting shapes? Is because it just makes it more appealing. You know, because if everything is just the same, it's not as interesting. All right. Who else has a question? I think someone had a question that they wanted to do open mic, which I think is fine. And then I'll answer Steve's question. Did someone want to? I think it was Dennis. Was it Dennis? Whose turn was it before you? Being respectful. Appreciate that. Or Sargon? Go, buddy. Ask your question. Or can you reiterate your question or speak it in your native tongue? We'll have Dennis translate since he's been to every country. Would the level up system be a good way of iterating characters? Yep. That's an easy question. Absolutely. That's why I recommend it. You know, the approaches that I teach you guys isn't necessarily like novice, like you only do this to learn. Not all of them are just only for learn. They're also just really good tricks as a professional. So I highly recommend doing it, regardless of your skill level. I do it all the time for my own work. Wait, what?
Okay, I'll ask my question. When asking asked, I said probably not because you want all your iterations to be level 3 and not have one look less cool than the others. But why is that not the case?
Iterations don't have to be level up though, by the way. They mostly should just be the same design, just iterative, like just like a different version. Kind of the best way to think about it is like a skin, right? For like a League of Legends or something like that,
Yeah, but
you know?
those aren't like level 1, 2, 3, right? They're all level 3
So
because they
they're
all have to look
so they're
epic.
all different. That's the answer, right? They just got to be different, your iterations. But you can definitely level them up too. That's another way of going around it. But I'd say in the case of what I'm asking you guys to do, like to iterate, I'm not asking you to level up unless I literally told you to level up. Because leveling up is to help you push your designs if you're having a hard time pushing them in the first place.
Okay. My question was, you mentioned a little bit earlier about timing your work, and we also
Uh-huh.
discussed this a little bit with people in the class. But I've never done it because I've always had the mindset, if a sketch takes me 5 hours, it takes me 5 hours,
Uh-huh.
you know, because I feel a lot of the time that I spend on one of my sketches is figuring out the skeleton, then the underlying muscle structure. And
Sure.
if I give myself 30 minutes, then I won't research like a 3D model or how does this muscle work, how does it look. I'll just skip all that and be like, oh shit, I have to get this done in 10 minutes from now. I can't research all of how this works. What's your opinion on that?
So what you're assuming is that you don't do any study alongside the quicker iterations. And I'm saying you do the timing to test what you know, not to just get the work done.
Right?
So if it takes you 5 hours to do something, what that reveals to me is that you don't really know much about what you're doing.
Yes.
See, you see what I'm saying? Because it's taking
Yeah.
you so long, it's because you don't know. And so you have to go out there and keep looking for it. And so you're more likely to run into obstacles that you just don't know how to cross often, and like creative blocks more often than your average bear, right? Like for instance, people ask me like, what do you do to get past like a creative block? And I say the same thing I do when I'm not having a creative block. I just go online and just research. I constantly am learning new things all the time when I want to learn new things all the time, right? And
Mm-hmm.
what timing yourself does is just quantifiably teaches you what you don't know and what you do know. Do you understand me? So,
Right.
so
Okay. It shows you your flaws.
yeah, so think of it like this. If I gave you a math test, right,
Mm-hmm.
and you had 10 minutes to do the math test, right,
Mm-hmm.
we can gauge how much you actually have like on your persons or on your in your memory, like what kind of immediate information you have just floating in your brain, right? Which can
Yeah.
help us determine what skill level you're at. For instance, the difference between me and Stephen Hawking's in terms of why he's an astrophysicist and why I'm not is that he could do really complex um, arithmetic in his head. You know, he could solve
Mm-hmm.
like crazy equations in his head. I have to write it down, and that's why that cognitive um, that cognitive head start or advantage, right, that he has, then it frees him up to think about more complex ideas, right? If I have to spend an hour just to figure out a simple equation that he could do in his head in a second, you see the difference, right? Then he's not distracted with solving the equation first and then trying to think more complexly, right? And it's the same thing with like
Right.
painting, right? Like if I don't have to worry about anatomy and perspective and color theory and forms, like as a as a conscious problem, right? I'm not consciously thinking about this as a struggle, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Then I could draw this weird peacock looking mother effer right now, right? And only focus on maintaining his peacockiness. Do you get what I'm saying? Like I'm not
Yeah.
struggling with values and stuff because I have a much stronger understanding of that stuff, right? Where you would have to draw the anatomy and all that stuff, and then that's when you start to run into issues that people run into all the time, right? Which is, oh, I feel like paintings are always so stiff, or my drawings are always so stiff, or they're not
Mm-hmm.
alive. It's because they are. They're just completely stiff. They're programmed, you know? Like every
Yeah.
step is programmed. And I'm saying to you, it's fine in the beginning to do that. But if you want to get better, um, and by the way, timing yourself is not necessarily a matter of trying to be a faster painter. It's just to do what I just explained. It's just to make it so these things that should just be second nature, just like falling and tripping analogy that I gave earlier, right?
Mm-hmm.
Allows you the freedom to then think on a more higher level, right? If you look at like people who train for sports, like there's a drill in football, American football, where they drop to the ground and get back up. Drop to the ground, get back up. Drop to the ground, get back up. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now, why do you think they practice this? They do like this like dozens of times. And this is American football, where they don't kick the ball around, or they throw a ball that looks like
Oh,
a...
I have no knowledge of American football, but I assume it's to get better at something relevant to the sport.
Yeah, there you go. So you're able to use the art of deduction. Good job. And so in football, you get tackled, and then when you get tackled, you fall to the ground.
Right.
So like training those muscles that allow you to just bounce back up, you know, seem pretty practical to train, right? Why
Yeah.
would a quarterback just practice throwing a ball over and over to a wide receiver who's sprinting full speed, a certain pattern, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Because when it's game time, the quarterback doesn't want to think, can I make that throw or not, right? They just think,
Yes.
what they think is that person's open, throw it. And knowing that that ball is going to get to that wide receiver accurately, you know? Like they're not
Right.
thinking whether it's going to get there accurately or not. They just know that that person's open and they got to throw it to him right now because they might get that advantage, right?
Mm.
And it's that's why if you see them miss a throw or a wide receiver misses a catch, right? They get overwhelmingly frustrated, right? Because in practice they catch it all the time, right? They've caught this a million times, but maybe the pressure got to them, or maybe the conditions were a little bit more unique than they're used to training. But
Yeah.
but imagine that, and you didn't train, right? Then you're going to obviously be someone like me who would miss catching the ball all the time or miss throws all the time. You know what I mean? Because
Yes.
on top of just like the heat of the game, I'm also not skilled just on the fundamentals of the game, right?
So would you say as a beginning student like me, it's fine not to time and just figure everything out as you go and
No, I'm
later on you
saying
would start
so.
timing?
So I'm saying timing is the way to improve yourself in that. 'Cause the fact that you're not doing that is what's slowing you down a bit. That's what I'm trying to explain. That you
Okay.
are not quantifiably testing your limits. You're giving yourself as much time as you need. And
Hmm.
and I'm trying to say when you give yourself a very strict limit, then you can gauge whether you've gotten better or not much easier. So if you say, okay, to finish a painting, I'm going to do a 10-hour painting. And at
Yeah.
the end of the 10 hours, no matter how I feel about it, I have to stop. And then you do another 10-hour painting. You can now contrast and compare what you did differently and what you could have done differently. And you just do it again and again. You just never change that time limit. Maybe you can make it
But
shorter, right? You can make it 8 hours instead of 10 hours, right?
yes.
And then eventually you'll start to see, I could probably do this in 5 hours, right? And so
But wouldn't that also happen automatically if you did it in 20 hours and then it took you 20 hours because you had to research all the stuff, but that's why your
sure.
anatomy knowledge increased and then you don't have to research that anymore. So next time it will take 10 hours because you now have all this new knowledge.
Yeah, it's just slower. I always tell people the only real way to not improve is not to do anything at all, right?
Yeah.
Like that's
Hmm.
really the best way to not to improve is just not doing anything. So even just brute forcing, just drawing however long you need to, will get you there too. But it's
Right.
just a slower route because it's like the
Okay.
example that I gave earlier to Carlos is where you're just constantly guessing. You have no objectiveness to your growth. This is why people get discouraged sometimes and frustrated because they feel like they're not going anywhere, which is completely false. They're always improving, right? But it feels like you're not improving. But now if you say, okay, I can look at this 10-hour painting and compare it to my other 10-hour painting, you know, you can now start to see, you know, what I did with the first 10-hour painting, I spent a lot of time on aspect A, you know, and
Yeah.
I don't think I needed to. I think I could cut that into half. And that'll save me some time.
Okay.
Let me give you a good example of...
I don't want to take too much time though because
No,
there's
this
so
is
many people with
no,
questions
this
and you
is a
said you
good
want to keep.
question, by the way. This is important. I think a lot of other people can see the value of listening to the answer to this. Um, so think of it like this, or actually, I have a good experiment for yourself to do to demonstrate the power of having quantifiable results. There's a game called Geometry Dash. Have you heard of it?
Yes, I've played this.
Okay.
Is
How
it the
often?
one where you? I think is it with the triangle and stuff.
Yeah, you just have to jump. Like how much
Yeah,
have you
yeah, yeah.
played it? Did you play it a lot?
Or I don't know, like 2 years ago on the airport, like 20 hours of it, maybe that
Okay.
much.
So then we'll have to have you test yourself in this. We can just talk about it. So when you first started, you were wrecking yourself every single time, correct?
Yes, yes.
But it's because it's rapid iteration, right? Because you were playing it literally round after round after round after round.
Hmm. Quite addictive,
You
yes.
improved quicker, right?
Hmm.
Versus if you were to just go and map out every aspect of the level and try to remember, that's not as effective as if you just
No,
brute force. Like the game doesn't give you that opportunity to just map out
no,
and
it
study.
doesn't.
And that's my point. And that's why you can improve in that game after a few hundred attempts. And with art, that's what you're doing. You're doing the opposite. You're not giving yourself this rapid iteration of learning. You're just focusing on long haul learning. And I'm saying that does work, but it's not as effective as just constantly uh, moving the dial. You know?
Okay.
Yeah, this is just how it works, man. And your brain works really well by recognizing patterns. And so the best way to recognize patterns is to see uh, the patterns often. So then your brain will start to compute it for you, whether you're paying attention or not. And those patterns will just come to you much later if you just are constantly just taking your time. Now let me be clear. Let me be frank. When it comes down to rendering and finishing the painting, I always encourage people just to take as much time as you need. Okay. But when you want to
Right.
learn, I'm saying, yeah, totally do things faster. You know, just do things
Okay.
much faster, and learn. Like so, after 30-minute sketch, right? After you've done a 30-minute sketch, write down why it sucked, like why you felt like you could have done better, or why you did so badly, or why you did so well. All
And
right,
then you go and study those things
and then
separately.
and then go study those things separately. Absolutely. But
Okay.
see, now there's some context, you know,
Yeah.
versus just kind of just like always guessing, always just never really knowing for sure, and having to spend 5 to 6 hours digging, you know,
Hmm.
for some resolution versus just constantly experimenting. This is how scientists roll. Scientists, spend years and years um, researching, not because they're just sitting there thinking about um, stuff. That's part of it. They're testing stuff too. They're constantly breaking things, They're
Yeah.
constantly, every day is an experiment. They say, I think we have an idea, and they will test it by either doing the math or putting it through a real live test, right? So that way people don't get killed when they send them on these missions or whatever, what have you,
Yeah.
you know? Because it's better to test it in rapid succession in simulations and in equations on paper in an iterative process versus putting them out into the field and then having them die and losing all those resources and time. They can learn that way too. That was the old way of learning back before the scientific method was invented. Okay,
Hmm.
you know what I mean? You got to
Just
remember,
dying. Yeah.
yeah, you got to remember like certain things just weren't invented and people did things backwards. Like for instance, like there was a time where people didn't have zero, the number zero. Like that wasn't
Yeah.
a thing. People didn't have negative numbers, right? Like to us, we're like, what are you talking about? Of course there's negative numbers, right?
Yeah, I know. I
and
got that class.
yeah, and my point is like, and I think now currently we are starting to discover that there is such things as imaginary numbers, and they're actually they call them lateral numbers. They said they're just in a different dimension, which is all crazy to think about. But
Okay.
but all that knowledge that they changed the imaginary numbers to lateral numbers then helped them understand fluid dynamics. You understand?
Right.
Right? So
Well, I
that
don't understand fluid dynamics,
oh
but
yeah,
I
okay.
get what you're
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, but you see what I'm saying? And the reason why technology is advancing faster and sciences are advancing faster is because of rapid iteration, because the internet is allowing people having more access. People are are having tools that make things easier to compute. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And our brain is already really good at that. You just got to give it the fuel. Okay?
Okay.
And you'll see that you'll improve much faster if you just...
I'll definitely give it a try. I've never done it before, so
Uh-huh.
that's good. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Sorry for taking so much time.
No, that's good. I think a lot of people need to really understand that. It's a very important question with a very important answer.
That was a very helpful question. That answered a lot of things I was about to ask.
Yeah, so I don't... If I feel like it's not a very lengthy answer to give to a question, I won't do it. But that one was worth it, so that's why I did it. So don't worry about it. Yeah, any other questions?
Guess it's my turn. Okay,
Yeah, go for it.
so one thing that you mentioned yesterday about the when we were talking about my choices and the fact that I would be better or not about focusing. And I mentioned, first of all, I mentioned the ADD stuff, and just to put it out there, I don't think that is a disease or whatever. It's just a way my brain works that allows me to be more creative, but on the other hand, it's a little more difficult to be concentrated in something. And I can super concentrate if something is really in my interest. For example, right now when you mentioned about the values, I was doing a painting, and when I looked at it, I was just struggling with the result because I couldn't make the rendering correctly, but I know how to make the rendering. So what was wrong? And when you mentioned about the lights, it just clicked, and all of a sudden I'm doing this super fast. So I know that there's some click I need to put things in order. That being said, my question is related to the decision-making things, because you asked me yesterday what I wanted to do, and I am really into character design, and I'm also working right now with RPGs. But when you asked, I don't know who you asked that, you asked about the golden ticket.
Yes.
The first thing that came into my mind was, I want to work at a Star Wars movie. That's the golden ticket for me. So I don't know if my choices, and this is all the time, it's not this particular moment. I don't know if my choices are correct, and I think that I am missing jobs and missing opportunities because I can't make my own mind about stuff, and I keep studying, I keep trying to get better, I keep making courses and studying every day, even because I do teach art too. But when it comes to a profession, when it comes to seeking the correct client or even posting online, it's a mess. If you look at my portfolio, it's a mess. There is a session for characters, there's a session for RPG, there's a session for comic books, there's a session for everything. Right now, other than all that, I'm doing a comic book for Comic-Con. So that's my biggest problem right now. I think that if I could know where to go, it would be so much easier for me to get a career. So that's my question. How do I make my mind rest on those things?
So there's a lot to unpack. So I'm going to start with the first thing. The first thing you mentioned is like ADHD. You don't think that is a disease. Well, of course, it's a problem. You know, it's a thing. Like people have it, and you know, just like anxiety is a thing, depression. You know, all these things are real things that people. You know, I used to have the mentality of like suck it up type of thing when I used to teach
No,
people.
it's not how I mean it.
No. Let me finish what I'm explaining.
Okay, sorry.
So what I want you to do is, and I think what you've done, which I want to kind of applaud you on, is that just embrace whatever weaknesses you may have, and then just try to make them your strengths. Yeah. And one thing that I tell people is that if there is an issue like this, then you just got to learn how to manage it. Sometimes people can't get rid of it entirely. You know, this is something you have to live with your whole life, right? So managing is a great way of thinking about it, because managing means that you're aware that it's a problem or it's an issue, but you are taking steps to control it or manage it. You can maybe never cure it, but you can at least have some say, you know? And
Mhm.
so one thing that I would say about that is like, don't worry about that. All right. So I understand that that's the thing that you might see, and you see it as not a problem. You see it as a creative outlet, right? But then you're at
Mhm.
the same time, you're like saying, well, but because of that, it's really hard for me to settle down on a thing, right? And
Mhm.
you're losing your sense of yourself because you're like, well, what can I do? Because I want to do all this stuff. But I would love to work on a Star Wars film, you know. But am I doing
Mhm.
that, or am I like? There's a lot of self doubt, correct?
Yeah. A
So
lot of it.
I'm gonna tell you a story. I'm gonna tell you a fable, and I heard this story from a really good show called Master of None. I like this show a lot. And the fable, it's about a story called the fig tree. Okay, so
Mhm.
what happens is that in the story there's a young lady, and she's in front of this like magical fig tree which has all these different paths that she can travel in her life. Like one, she's a doctor, another one she's like a painter, another one she has a large family, and another one she's, travels the world. There's all these different variations, and all of them look great, you know all of the
Mhm.
options look amazing, you know but she doesn't know which one to choose. She has a hard time choosing. She's like, but I want to make sure I choose the one that's best for me. But as time goes on and she's still trying to decide, the fig tree starts to wither away, right? And branch by branch are falling off of this tree, okay? And each branch that falls off, she cannot travel anymore. It's gone. It's an option that she can never have anymore, right? And as she's still being indecisive, she's starting to make some choices now, right? She's getting a little bit desperate. So she chooses one, but then she looks over at another fig tree branch and she's like, well, that one looks great. And so she goes over there, but then time goes on and the previous branch she was on now disappears. Okay? And now she's feeling even more uncertain, did she make the right choice because the other one showed such great promise, you know? And she keeps doing this. She keeps jumping from branch to branch and branch to branch. And as she's doing that, all the branches of the fig tree eventually start to wither away until there's only a couple left. And even with those couple, she still can't choose because she is... Wait, hold on just a second. My wife needs my help. Give me a moment. All right, I'm back. Sorry. My wife needed my help with the baby. All right, it's all good now.
Mhm.
Uh,
Just
okay.
I'm gonna let my mic off because there's somebody hammering a wall. So if you want me to answer something, I'll just turn it on back,
Oh,
turn
yeah.
it back on.
Yeah, walkie-talkie.
Yeah.
Yeah, appreciate it. So, okay, so all these branches are falling off. This lady can't decide. And eventually, um, she's only left with a few branches, right? And when she finally chooses whatever branch she chose, she feels very regretful of, flip-flopping so much, and she wishes that she would have had different alternatives in her life, and all that kind of weighs her down. And it's unfortunate because the last branch finally falls from the tree, and that's the end of the story. And the reason why I'm telling you this story is because, a lot of times people will get in this system of thinking about what could have been, or what could be a life or a world that they live in. And when you do that, it's your own internal struggles. Like no one is in control of your feelings other than yourself, right? And when you're just trying to decide all these different like paths of what you could have done and whatever, you're distracting yourself from the present, you know. And when you distract yourself from the present, days will keep going on, and you'll keep like second guessing everything. And the reality is just choose whatever the path may be and just stick with it. Stay focused, regardless, knowing that if you don't, you'll feel this anguish that you may have not chose the right path continuously, you know? But if you just say, no, yeah, I'm going to do the Star Wars thing. Like, that's what I want to do, right? then you'll get to it. And then one day you'll get there and you'll accomplish that. And once you've accomplished it, then you can look back and say, well, is that something I still want to do? And then you can make a new choice. You can choose a new focus. We live in a time where you can do that now, right? See, the reason why I think this is like a new phenomenon is because back in the day, like our physiological bodies are nowhere near as sophisticated as they need to be for the time and age we live in. Meaning that people died like in their 30s. You know what I mean? And so there was never an opportunity to have like a midlife crisis. But because of modern technology and medicine and science, people are living longer. And since people live longer, they have more time to reflect. And when they have more time to reflect, this is all new to our genetics, you know? And so this is why I usually encourage people, just stay focused, pick one or two things and just work on them. So I was working as when I first started my life, I wanted to be a musician. I did that for 3 or 4 years. It didn't work out. I decided I didn't want to do that anymore. Instead, what I'd rather do, oh, hold on, I can call her. Oh, she's coming. What I rather wanted to do was to have a real career in doing something. And so then I decided to do game programming, right? Because I wanted to be a programmer. I love video games. But then I saw art, and I was like, no, that looks way cooler. I'm going to do that first. Or I didn't think first. I was like, I'm going to do that. And so then I did that, and I've been doing that for like the last decade. And then I started teaching. I didn't think about teaching, but then I was like, oh, this is pretty great too. I'm going to do this. And so then I started teaching. I started doing concept art, and I got into the point where I'm like, I want to do more. Right? I feel like I'm in a really good position with my career. I can do something else. So now I've tried build my own studio, and I did that for a little bit. And I was like, this is something I don't really like. I don't like to manage more than myself. I don't like to be managed by like, or be in that position of like management. I just rather just kind of make stuff. And so then I decided to make my own projects and my own artwork and kind of disregard the rest, And then now I'm in a position where I'm like, I'm working from home and I have a lot of time to be with my family, more so than I did before. I really enjoy it. And I work towards this, right? Like I spent the last 2-3 years making this a goal of mine. And to me, that's really, really, really valuable. And now that I've been doing that, I'm like, okay, well, what else can I do to compound this? Like, how else can I better secure my future, but also just build a better circumstance where I can truly work independently, and really have a lot more control. And I was like, well, creating my own IPs and my own projects, because if I sell those and put those onto like some sort of licensing like system or circle, then I can only, if I just need to make 1 or 2 really good projects, I can live off of the merits of the licensing for a while and then really spend even more time on other projects. And more importantly, more time with the people I care about, like my friends and family. And so I've made a few adjustments to what I wanted in my life as time goes on. But one thing that I've always stayed true to was when I decided to do something, I stuck with it until I was pretty good at it. And that's something that you just need to adopt. And then once you've accomplished one of your goals, which right now could be the Star Wars thing, and that, to be honest, could be closer than you think. And I don't mean like tomorrow or anything like that, but like maybe in 3 or 4 years, you might be able to do it. I have people that I knew that had no idea that they would be working on these mega epic projects, and it took them, a few years to get the skill set to even be recommended, but they did it. And there's no reason why you can't either. It'll take time, but that's the only requirement is really time and effort.
Yeah, it's interesting that the RPG thing is it was almost an accident. I got a hold of a client and he liked my work and I started it. And before I really didn't have any job. I was just training and the fact that he is demanding stuff and that he is asking a high level of quality, even for the smallest illustrations, is making me way better. And even on solving problems, like there's one thing you draw to yourself. The other thing is to have somebody requesting some levels of finishing that's more directed is a good focus tool.
Yes.
So I think that what I realized was, okay, so if I go for RPGs, I'm working on fantasy, and I am being requested to do something really, really hard. So that means that, doesn't mean that I need to astray from that idea. It's just that this could be one of the ways. That's how I'm thinking of it.
Yes.
That helps me a lot.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, think of everything as a learning opportunity, right? But there's definitely things you can do to accelerate it, but don't be focused on that. That's kind of the moral of the story here. Because
Sure.
if you're trying to say, you know, why can't I have it tomorrow, and letting that drive your discouragement, you're going to feel discouraged your whole life. Okay? So just
Okay.
feel like take one task at a time and have like a larger goal that you'd like to accomplish, and know that it's fine even if you don't accomplish it, right? For instance, like I loved working, like I worked for Blizzard, and I wanted to work for Blizzard for years. I had applied to them for like literally for 5 years straight and never got an opportunity. I knew people there. I had made friends with the recruiters, you know. I did all of the stuff that I needed to do, you know, and nothing happened. And then one day I was just like, you know, I have a really good career. Like I'm doing really good. I'm working on these really great projects. I don't really need to work for Blizzard. Like I'll be okay not working for them, you know. I actually am all right with that. I have no beef with not working for them. You know, I've accepted my fate. And as a product of like trying to work for Blizzard, I became an extraordinary artist. That's the way I thought about it, right? But then one day Blizzard called me up. They're, hey, we want to hire.
Yeah, I was expecting that ending.
Yeah, and I was like, well, all right, well then I guess I get to work at Blizzard after all. But my point is I didn't have that ambition. I had that ambition for quite a while, and I tried and it didn't work out. But I accepted it, like I said, not because I gave up, but just because I realized my hard work or trying to work there made me really good, and that was good enough. That was good enough for me. And but then, you know, obviously when they reached out to me, I was like, yeah, let's do this. And I think Blizzard has been one of the best studios I've ever worked for. If I ever work for a studio again, I would work there, but I don't think that's ever going to happen.
Well, thanks.
I hope that helps you out, gives you some more guidance.
Really did. Thank you.
Cool. All right. Any other questions?
Hello?
Hey.
Hey. Oh, is there somebody else?
Well, you started, so go ahead. The other person just
Yes.
boom. That person just made a noise. It doesn't count.
So the sketch that you're doing right now, is this something that you would do for yourself or something that you do for, you know, for job-wise?
The approach is the same, if that's what you're trying to get at. This is definitely for myself. I'm not doing this for anybody else. That's why it's so weird. But if I had a job, the only difference is that there's an agenda. Like if they said we want like an orange, yellow helmet guy with like blue arms, then I'm right on task, right? Like a weird looking dude. But if they're asking me to draw like a pirate, then I just draw a pirate. I'll just approach it the same way. And here's the thing. Everything I'm teaching you guys is exactly how I approached it, just at a little bit higher level. So for instance, I do thumbnails, but I don't sketch them really broadly. I sketch them almost as clear as you see this drawing, you know? But that's because I don't want to give you guys the delusion that if you don't draw photorealistic stuff, then you're not a good artist, or get really well painted paintings, you're not going to ever get jobs. It helps, absolutely, but you guys are just learning, so don't worry. Just take your time, get better. And then just know that the techniques I'm teaching are techniques that I absolutely use every time I work on anything, which is sketch something out. Now this is more illustrative because it's cropped and he's like kind of posed and it's kind of weird. So this is like myself. But if this is a concept for a client, it would be full bodied, right? And it would be one part of the sketch and there would be more, you know, because I do very lots of it. And then depending on what they're looking for, depends on how much more I put into it.
Do you like doing it on one layer, or do you, do like
it all depends. It all depends. Sometimes it makes sense to just paint it, like especially my thumbnails. I don't really care too much, but like other times it makes sense to have multiple layers for like non-destructive reasons. Like if they wanted like to see it in different colors, then I would absolutely have it in different layers. So that way I can just change it easily later. So I just think about the task and what may be asked of me. I try to be predictive. Like if there's like segmented body parts of the character, you know, then I'd probably have multiple layers. Right. But if it's just like just an idea of the character, then I'll just paint them on one layer. But it's painting on one layer or not is irrelevant. You just got to show them results. And why it's good to have multiple layers is because of the sense that there might be changes to those results, which are almost always. But since I paint so well and so quickly, painting on one layer is no big deal. I can paint this again, right? I can paint another variation of this again. So if like I was asked to do an iteration of this design, like I can do it. It's no big deal. Right? Because I'm well trained.
Got skills.
Yeah, I got the skills that pays the bills. And that's my point. You know, that's why I teach you guys these techniques. It's not just like you guys are students, just do this. No, I'm like teaching you stuff that I do. You know, and I'm just teaching you at very basic level so that you can learn it and then eventually apply it at some capacity. You guys will all evolve your own processes, I'm sure. Right?
Right.
But the point I'm trying to make is that, you know, whether you paint on one layer or not is irrelevant. Just make good results and be confident that you can do it again if you had to. Can you kill your baby? Like I was trying to explain to Lindsay earlier, right? My baby cried a little bit. He's like, what? Don't kill me.
He's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, not real babies.
Last question. What do you got going on nowadays? Like, are you just doing your own thing, or are you working for a company?
So I do freelance part-time art directing for this game called Osiris New Dawn. It's a company that game that my old employer is working on, and he brought me on. I'm more than happy to help out. I like it, space stuff. I love space stuff. But my main source of income is wrapped around my courses and my tutorials. Yeah. And then I do freelance here and there. Like right now I'm working on a horror film, which is nice.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and then I'm going to be slotted to do like a fantasy film. I have to do a meeting with the production designer this week sometime. And then with my spare time, I just hang out with the family and try to learn new things. Like I said, I want to be kind of even more independent, right? I want to have a product out there that perpetuates more income just by being out there. Kind of like my videos do that already, but I want like something like a genuine game. And not only just because I want to do that, just because I've always loved video games and I want to do better. I want to make more video games. I just want to be really good at it. And I'm at a position where I'm really good at creating the art assets. So that's a big part of like coding and all that stuff is really valued, but it's really, really important to have art. In fact, the art pipeline is one of the largest groups of people in the game dev environment, meaning that the art department is the largest. Like the programmers is not nearly as big, right? Like the art of a game takes the majority of the time of a lot of these AAA games, and even like indie games, you know. And so I usually encourage people to understand this because there's always going to be need for art. Like these games are heavily artistic, you know.
Yeah.
And so for me, I know that I have that asset, so I'm okay. You know, like I could probably create anything on my own. I just need to learn coding, and I just need to have the time and patience, and I do. I have both of those. So there's no reason why I can't do it.
Right. Cool. Cool. Well, thanks.
Yeah, dude. Totally. All right. One last question. Anybody have a question? People writing it? I can't see the chat. The chat's hidden from me right now.
If nobody
Question in
is,
the chat.
There's no questions in the chat, but someone said they had a question. Go for it.
well, I was gonna ask another one if nobody has another question, but I
Yeah.
don't want to go in front of anything.
Yeah.
I was
that's
wondering
kind of
about. I was wondering about. Okay, Ian has a question.
Okay. Let's answer Ian's question, and then I'll answer your question, and then we'll call it a
All
day.
right.
All right, Ian, what was Ian's question? Here, let me. Yeah, go for it. Is he typing it? I'm assuming he's typing it. Oh, no. Well, it seems like your GoToMeetings mic is muted.
Oh my god, are you serious? That is so far.
Oh, I hear Carlos.
Hey, could I ask you something just real quick?
Yeah, go for it.
Hey, do you mind if we use Corel Painter?
I don't care what you use.
Yeah.
You can use the other software that you
excellent.
wanted. Yeah,
Okay,
as long as
okay,
it's
cool.
good.
Sorry about this.
Yeah, as long as it's good.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
And it takes me like about an hour and a half to 2 hours to feed him. I totally forgot.
Wait, I assume this is what he wants to ask. He posted earlier, do you have any favorite techniques for painting repetitive patterns for armor? Actually, I was going to ask Anthony if being 24 is too late to get into concept art / design. Yes, unfortunately, Ian, unfortunately it is. Yeah, you need to be 22. Dennis got it. So you just missed the deadline to be a good concept artist. So try again next time. All right? Pick a different career path. Jokes aside, of course it doesn't matter, right? Like you got to think about it, right? You go in for a job interview, and then let's say you're 35, and they say to you, "Well, you're 35 years old. Yeah, I don't know if we're only looking for people under the age of 30." And the reason why this is like a silly hypothetical is because no one's going to do that. People will hire you because of your skill. Whether you're 22 or 24 and you're learning how to do art, it's all irrelevant. All that matters is if you stay with it. I've had students that are in their 40s just starting out and they're working towards this. I have students who are just straight coming out of high school or still in high school. I think being older makes you a little bit wiser, right? Or at least it should, because you've experienced real life where when you're a teenager, you don't have a lot of these context of how hard real life can be. Like when I started learning art, I was 23 years old. And I've already lived life a little bit, right? I've already had some experience of like how hard life can be. And so that helped. That helped me kind of keep a fire underneath my butt, you know? And like, I guess I was going to ask specifically because I have a lot of people telling me I just need to get a job as soon as possible. I've done that with working as a UI designer, and I honestly hated it. Yeah, so that's a good question. That's a better question than the age thing, because the age thing is a silly question, right? I think you can admit. So the other problem is this external pressure. You see, you're probably living in a Western society, which Western society has this strict assessment that if you're not working, you don't have these things in your life, then you're a failure. And that's just not true. Now, there is a difference between, being in really extreme poverty and not being in extreme poverty. Like, I think you should try to get out of that situation if you can, but I doubt that that's your situation, right? But, at the same time, you have to pay the bills and have a place to stay. So having a job is reasonable too. I had a friend who worked as a car salesman full-time, and he went to school full-time, and he had 2 babies to raise, right? So he made it work, and now he's like a really established and amazing environment modeler in the industry, and now working towards a concept art. And I'm just trying to tell you this because, it just takes time, right? And so the problem with a lot of educational platforms today, I mean, even the implication of my class is like a boot camp, like you're doing this like mentorship. It's going to take a month and you're going to be epic at the end of it. The reason why it's called a mentorship or even like a boot camp is this idea that I'm not here to teach you guys an extraordinarily long time, right? I'm here to kind of give you enough ammunition that if you never take my class again, that you will at least have some insight to help you stay a little bit more level-headed as you go on your own, right? And what's important to understand is that when back in the day, how careers were made were people would be apprentices to a master's. Like, so you guys would, if this is like a real method for me to train you guys to be masters, what we would do is you would live in my house and work under me for nearly a decade. And then that would then level you up to a journeyman. And then once you're a journeyman, that would imply that you are not only capable of the work at hand, you can do it on your own. You don't need me as your mentor anymore. You can just go out and start your own business. And then once you've done that for like another 8 years, then you would become a master. And once you become a master at whatever that may be, then you can then take in employees and train them and teach them and prepare them for the next stages of their careers, right? And this will all take about 20, 30 years, right? And this was just standard, and people understood that this is how things get done. This is how you train people. You understand me? But now it's like, 3 hours or 3 years, you get in college, you'll have a successful career with a degree, or 4 years, and so forth and so on. Like all of this type of stuff, right? And the reality is, no, you just need some time and patience, and whatever will get you there, take that path and try not to overwork yourself and kill yourself with the standards of modern society, because it's only going to hurt you more than it's going to help you. But at the same time, if you need to get paid, try to take a job here and there if you can. But like I always tell people, be careful by being guided by making more money, because it might make you lead to positions in your life where you are actually more stressed out, like you were just saying with your graphic design job, right? Like you got a job in art, but yet you're not very happy with it or fulfilled. And that's what happens when you rush. But it's okay. You live and you learn. That's kind of the point I want to make with you. Okay? I actually got to roll out now. I know I was going to say I was going to answer one more question, but we'll save it for next week. Sound good? I appreciate you guys. Thanks for all the hard work. Hope you guys learned a lot. It was a great first week of class. You guys did such good work, and you guys were good sports. Let's go ahead and, push ourselves even further onto the next week. You guys can talk to one another. I highly encourage you to communicate and talk and befriend one another so that way you guys can give each other feedback and also keep each other motivated. And with all that being said, peace out. Have a great weekend. And I'll talk to you guys real soon. Laters. Thank you for watching this video. I appreciate it. Please subscribe to watch more in the future. If you like the video, I would appreciate a thumbs up. If you like this content, you can go to my website, robotpencil.net, where you can find mentorships, tutorials, and a Patreon to get more exclusive content. Thanks again, and I'll see you guys in my next videos.